Hey folks, mark your calendars because on April 27th, we'll be launching our new book, which is of course titled Love as a Business Strategy. Visit loveasabusinessstrategy.com for more info and sign up for a chance to get a free copy. And if you're interested in bringing love as a business strategy to your organization, we are now offering free mini sessions of our globally resonant Seneca Leaders training experience. These mini sessions dive into 3 topics to help begin transforming leadership behaviors and influencing culture for the better. Space is limited, so visit softway.com/events to learn more and RSVP now. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. We're here to talk about business, but we want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. We believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. I'm your host, Jeff Ma. I'm a director at Softway, a business-to-employee solutions company that creates products and offers services that help build resilience and high-performance company cultures. Every episode, we dive into one element of business or strategy and test our theory of love against it. And I'm trying something very different today. I'm joined today by 2 very special people in my life. We work together. They are associate directors of the project management group, or we've worked together for almost 2 to 3 years, depending on who you're talking about. And we have Miss Ashley Vega. Hello, Ashley.
Hello.
And we have Erin Poole. Hey, Erin.
Hey.
So if they look nervous, it's because they are. It's because yesterday I called them up and said, I need you to show up for a podcast. And so with very little context, I understand what I've done to them and I apologize. And
I accept your apology.
We are going to try something, because as we continue exploring stories and learnings and growth in our own lives, I wanted to do something for myself. I wanted to have a little selfish episode here today. I myself have gone through what I consider a very huge transformation in my own leadership, in my own style, my understanding of culture over the last several years. And both of you were present for a good chunk of that learning and that growth. And I wanted to retro on that today, and I invited you to help me out, give a little bit of perspective, because you knew me at a different time. You knew me, not that I've gotten anywhere, incredibly, perfect at this point at all. I'm still on that journey, but we're very close now. I think we've worked so long together that I've gotten a lot of that feedback along the way. You guys have helped me along my journey along the way. So I wanted to take some time and talk about that today. And that's why you're here. So surprise. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sweating this out. So I guess to kind of break the ice, I will do some icebreakers and let you guys warm up a little bit, because I know podcasting can be nerve-wracking. So I'm gonna start with you, Ashley. Simple icebreaker question. What is something that you get embarrassed about that most people don't get embarrassed about?
Oh, that is hard, Jeff.
I know, I don't like these.
Did you give me where's Maggie? Did she make this up?
She's backstage. She's listening and laughing probably.
Yes. Something I get embarrassed about that other people probably don't.
Yes.
Probably my car's cleanliness. I'm very particular about if my car has been washed, when the last time it was washed, when's the last time that I cleaned out the interior. It probably comes from my mom growing up. Like, you need to take care of it. You need to take care of it. So I'm always embarrassed if I haven't washed my car recently, which during pandemic times has been, I had to cancel. I had a car wash membership, had to cancel it, and I'm just like, when's the last time I even washed my car?
That's a great answer.
I feel like, I don't know why I admitted that. Now it lives forever for everybody to know.
Erin, what is your go-to comfort food?
Mm, I feel like, well, it used to be a very specific restaurant in Houston, but I've since moved. The one in Houston was it's called Local Foods, and they have a really good truffled egg salad sandwich. It's
Okay.
so good. When I'm having a bad day, I'm like, that's my go-to, like stress eating. And I love to stress eat. That's my thing. I love it. It makes me feel better afterwards. And people say it doesn't. It does. It makes me feel really good. So I love eating this egg salad sandwich from Local Foods. But normally, now that I've moved from that location, it's just you fall back pizza. Pizza's such a good comfort food. You know, you're having a bad day, pizza makes everybody happy.
I agree with both of those. And now I'm feeling very uncomfortable. I've been just stalling because I realized only in this moment just how awkward this is to have an episode talking about myself. So I'm going to actually ask if maybe Ashley, you can start. Tell us a little bit about you and kind of the context of, you working with me at Softway and, kind of just giving a little background about yourself.
Sure. So I'm coming up on 3 years in June. I think I started shortly after Erin did. Fun fact, Erin and I used to work together, so that's pretty cool too. So I started, Jeff was my direct supervisor. He's the one that did all my training. And I came on as a project manager. Currently in role, I'm associate director of many things. I think I do a lot of things right now, working in the business development space. And Jeff and I are also facilitators on our Seneca Leaders experience for leaders and training. So that's kind of how we work together. I would say now in our world, Jeff, you're more of a mentor to me versus like a supervisor by supervisor roles and responsibilities, as opposed to how when we originally started working together, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. A lot of that is due to our own like structural changes within the organization of becoming more flat. Things like I don't feel like I'm anybody's boss anymore, which is one of them. We're all leaders in our own right?
Well, and a global pandemic that just kind of shook everything up.
Oh, right. That thing too. Erin, a little bit about you, if you will, please.
Pretty similar to Ashley. Been here for, I think I just had my 3-year anniversary. And actually worked project manager too, as well, associate director now. Worked pretty closely with you, Jeff, not in the beginning, but in 2019, we had a good run of working really closely together. I think it was pretty vastly different from when I first started. And you were definitely direct boss, would go to you for any questions or so. But at that point in time, we didn't work very closely together or anything like that. So had a good run when we worked on a project together for about a year. And I would say got a lot of good mentorship from you during that, but a bit different from when I first started for sure.
So to kind of set the stage for our conversation, what I'm looking for today is brutal honesty, which we're used to, but just not normally with a camera on in a podcast recording. But I want to go back in time a little bit. Just to set the context from my perspective, 3 years ago, roughly when you all joined, I was in the midst of a lot of self-awareness gaining, I guess, a lot of realizations about my own. I thought I was a great leader. I thought I was, just kind of God's gift to mankind when it came to leadership, and I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I knew everything, and what I didn't know that I could always find out easily, and I thought everyone had something to learn from me. I didn't know that, right? Like I didn't say that out loud to myself or anyone else. And what ended up happening was it just really affected, looking back now, I see a lot of the ways that I definitely was not really helping, especially when it came to like actual outcomes from a business perspective, but also our culture. And so I really wanted to get some fresh perspective. This is not something we've talked at length about, off air. So I thought it'd be a really interesting experiment to come together and talk about it at length for the first time together. And I'm actually very nervous about it. So I guess I'll open with asking you all what your impressions of me as a boss were 3 years ago, and I can take it. Or any stories, or go for it. I'm too nervous. You guys take it.
I feel like it was pretty interesting. You definitely seemed like in the beginning, like pretty hands-off boss. You're the cool boss, just like, hey, if you need anything, just let me know, like I'm not gonna like be, watching your every move and this and that. And so I was like, okay, this is different from my past boss too. So it felt refreshing at first. I still remember too of some of our trainings, and you were sitting down walking me through a PowerPoint presentation, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And you had like a list of them on an Excel, a list of all the links to these education spreadsheets and stuff like that, or presentations. And you're like, oh, well, do you just want to click through them and like let me know if you have any questions? And I was like, yeah, actually. And so I was like, this is perfect. And I can kind of learn on my own and write down questions and things like that. But I remember at that point not actually really going back to you with that many questions. I was just kind of like, okay, this makes sense. It's kind of basic stuff. But I do feel like that kind of set the stage a bit for not really coming back to you for a lot of questions in my early learning. I got assigned to projects pretty early then right after that, and started forming relationships with a lot of other directors and leaders. And those are the individuals who I would typically always go to for questions. I remember Chris Petrie was the one who taught me how to submit an invoice for the first time, which was, I think all who know Chris Petrie would be very surprised that he was the one who taught me that. But, I think that by, having that hands-off approach, I didn't start forming that relationship with you as much early on. And I know as it progressed and I started getting on other projects, I remember at one point in time being like, I'm closer to the CEO, who I go and ask questions to multiple times a week, than I do my own boss, Jeff. I don't really ask him any questions. I don't really go to him for anything. So I think it kind of set the stage for that kind of relationship early on.
Thank you for sharing.
Was that painful, Jeff?
That wasn't so bad yet. That's all true stuff. All true stuff. Hit me with the left hook, Ashley. Go ahead.
So my experience of you when I first started was that you were very busy. I saw that you were on a lot of projects. You were on a lot of tech projects. Your time was hard to find, even for some of our initial trainings and things. And I remember that I'm very tactical. So I was like, is there a list, like a check? When I start a project, is there a checklist? And you're like, yeah, but it's outdated. So you can try this and you can do that. And I'm like, okay. And then I remember trying to like learn project plans, and you always take this like philosophical, like, what if a half FTE does this? And what if we bring in a copywriter to do that? And you gave me this like scenario. And I remember thinking, I don't even know how to use this tool yet. And you want me like critical thinking about projects. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do my best here. So I thought, man, I hope that I can do this job, because when I came into this job, I didn't know a lot of the terminology. A lot of times you guys would say things I felt very inadequate. I was like, oh, I don't know what agile is. Like, I'm going to fail at my job. Everybody's about agile. I don't know what it is. Not good. Like Google, YouTube, let me figure out what it is. But me, like Erin, I felt like we didn't get a lot of time up front together. I kind of learned on my own and eventually got put on like a program. And then I'm learning from other people who have been running programs, but it hadn't been done necessarily in that way before. So we're kind of recreating things and doing things. And I also was going to Muhammad with all the things because he was very accessible to me. So I didn't feel like you were as accessible in that capacity as like a guide for me as an early PM, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, sorry, but I do think that
totally true.
No, but I do on the other end of that though, I felt like you took a vested interest in our one-on-ones to like get to know me as a human, and like from that we've got a really great friendship and mentorship dynamic going as well. I don't know if that was a left hook, but
well, I think what I do, so this is through my own introspection over all this time, and I continue. So what was going on during those times from my perspective was, number one, like big ego. So number one, thinking that my time was extra valuable, that I had something to offer to everyone. And also really I kind of playing mind games, if you will, really painting a picture like I'm, busier than I am, or kind of having this open door policy where I'm like, I'm the cool boss. So if you need anything, my door's open, but I'm going to let you free. I'm going to like let you fly, just spread your wings, don't be afraid to fail. I'm right here. But the reality is, and maybe you guys experienced this, was that, I'm not actually there. And I knew that because no one ever came to my door, my quote unquote open door. I left it quote unquote open. And then, the fact that nobody stepped through, and like you both mentioned, you both turned to Muhammad, who, by hierarchy is above me for support, help. And he set an example of what supporting actually looked like, because you guys were willing to go. He felt accessible. He was actually there to support. He would check in. I just checked out, and I framed that time period of me being just so, such a cool boss. And so I look back though, and I'm really, really kind of frustrated and embarrassed about just how much I really I can think of, besides you two, other people who are, not on this show today, many people that I definitely harmed through that behavior, like not just didn't help, but harmed and hurt their confidence, hurt their their careers, to be honest, based on how I quote, led them. So yeah, that's me. That's been, and I share that not because, this is kind of like the truth that I've come to understand better, but I've yet to go back and really seek that perspective and feedback from people. And a lot of those people aren't, at Software anymore, or just a long time ago. And so you two are actually two of the most kind of senior in terms of experience with me. And so do you guys have any like specific recollection, now that you heard me, like where my mindset's coming from? Does that spark anything that you remember me doing, saying, or kind of leaving you in that space during that time? I'd love to be reminded of it.
I have a story, but I don't think I've ever shared it with you. So sorry in advance.
I'm excited about this.
Stop apologizing. I asked for this and I really want it. I really want it.
So there was a point in time, not like when I had just started, probably further in. I think I was a senior project manager at this point, where I was doing a lot of training of new hires. We had quite a bit of growth. We had just hired a bunch of people. I know Erin was working with some, I was working with some, and I had recently taken on a program, a larger project, and I was also working with, I think, 3 individuals that I was training that were new and kind of in the inception of their journey here at Softway. But I remember somebody came to me and said, "Hey, what's the plan for this new hire?" And I was like, "What new hire? What are you talking about?" And because I was the one that they would come to because I was doing a lot of that initial training, and it was probably HR wanting to set some stuff up, and I was feeling really overwhelmed at the time. I had a lot on my plate. I was having trouble kind of balancing all of the things, and so when I got notice of this like new hire, I like got really emotional about it, and I reached out to Jeff. And first I made like a whole plan. I was like, all right, I need a plan for this person. Let me figure out what I need to do. Like, what's their name? Who are they? How do I fit them into my schedule next week? All the things. And I reached out to Jeff and I was like, hey, there's a new person starting, question mark, kind of thing. It was via chat. Took you a while to respond, but you were just kind of like nonchalant, like, yeah, such and such, they were a hire from this and that. And I was like, okay. And we just kind of left it for a while. And I was increasingly getting more and more emotional about it. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, how am I going to juggle 4 people and my workload and et cetera? And eventually we got to the point where Jeff's like, no, like, you're not going to do anything with this person. And I was like, oh, well, what's the plan? And you basically didn't have a plan. I'm not going to name the person, but you didn't have a plan for this person. It was kind of thrust upon you for whatever reason. And I think that I remember I went to 2 of my coworkers and I like had like a little breakdown because I was like, cool, like Jeff is giving me more work. He didn't communicate it with me. He didn't, like, all these things and thoughts in my head. And it basically came down to, if I had a different relationship with you at that point, I would have come to you immediately and been like, hey, what's the deal with this, that kind of thing. But you weren't really communicating overly well at that point, I guess. And so I was like, well, this is just a thing. It is what it is. I'm gonna work through it. And had my little breakdown, went back to you, kind of confronted you about it. And you were like, no, like, I wouldn't do that to you. And I was like, okay. But essentially what I'm talking through is like your communication at that time. And with all of these new hires, I was kind of working on developing the training program for these new hires that were coming through because we were still growing. And I was like, well, I guess I've got another thing on my plate. And it was really crappy.
And I remember that. And yeah, we haven't talked about that ever. So thank you for sharing. I do remember that. And I appreciate you sharing that because I never even came to terms to this point with like the emotional kind of toll that took on you. Because during that time, I was just basically being apathetic at that time. I was kind of convincing myself that I could behave this way because I had enough on my plate to worry about, or, other things I would tell myself, which really weren't, I remember your plate during that time. And if we were to compare plates, there was no comparison. So like to be your, leader or manager and to kind of just drop all that on you was a somewhat, looking back, kind of intentional kind of move. There's a point where I'm just like intentionally saying, you know what, there's enough going on for everyone. So let's just let her handle it or let her figure it out, which is, messed up. So that was quite some time ago, but I do apologize for having put you through that for sure.
Well, you apologized too, but we hadn't really talked about it, like you said. So it just didn't feel good,
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, we'll figure it out, I guess. And I love training. So I also didn't want to come off as like not wanting to be a part of the training stuff because like I really like it, but it wasn't sustainable.
And I think what I tried to do since those times, because a lot has changed over time in myself, in our organization, all these things. But personally, on my journey, one of the things that was missing back then was that personal relationship, was how you and everyone would feel like I was like on this island at times. Like I said, you guys would go to Muhammad above, like a layer above, around me. You'd have to work in ways that had to go around me, essentially, like, because you knew I was this immovable kind of like apathetic rock in the middle of all this. And keep in mind, at the same time, like my job description included like supporting you and helping you and like being a part of it. And I just created all these extra steps to make that happen, rather than us being able to come together and talk about what's needed and what needed to happen. It always ended up being, I would hear from Muhammad what was going on in your world, and being asked why I wasn't on top of what was going on in your world, why I wasn't supporting. And I'd be like, well, they didn't come to me with, like making excuses that, no one came to me. And at the time we weren't yet going through this. I wasn't going through this journey yet. And I missed out on a lot of opportunities to like build that trust during that time. That's one of the biggest things. And beyond that, because of what I'd already kind of created, I was unwilling. It took me the longest time, and I'm still working on it, to start getting down that road where I can actually kind of repair that as well. Because once it's gotten to that point, it's not just a matter of all of a sudden now we trust each other. Like, it requires a level of forgiveness and things like that. I was comfortable inviting you two on the show because my impression is that there has been like repair and forgiveness since that time from the two of you. It helps that, I mean, in my journey, I've learned a lot directly from you two in so many different ways. Like, Ashley, when you were training those, multitude of new hires, like that taught me how people should be trained, to be honest. And at the time I'd make it look like I knew how they should be trained. And, like I was all very confident in that, but I learned that more from you, amongst other things. And Erin, your style of like managing and being on top of things was something that I found almost like threatening to start with, because you were like just on top of the game. And in my mind, I had to be stronger. I had to be better. I had to be the leader. I couldn't be any lesser than. And today I definitely know that you are. We have a joke where you keep calling me boss because we know that.
Well, it's actually no. It's kind of a funny joke now, and I was thinking about this, like reflecting on the beginning time, and I mean, we weren't talking shit about you, Jeff, but I think there was a point in time where as PMs said, like, we all said, we're like, no, Jeff doesn't really feel like our boss, because you just weren't there, and I think there's that point in time, it comes down to support, when a lot of us were really just starting out, learning and things like that. It felt like, we didn't have the support, and we found it in a lot of different areas. So we would talk about, we're like, I don't know where Jeff is. I think Ashley touched on it, of you're just really busy, and we'd see you for a second, you kind of check in like, hey guys, and make a joke, and we'd be like, Jeff, and then we'd like not see you again. And it was Jeff doesn't really feel like our boss, and where's Jeff? And we found that support in other people, which I think when I began training people, I almost went to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and was quite a bit micromanaging in the beginning of my training, others, because I didn't want them to just feel like they didn't have someone there. So I almost was a little too there, and went complete opposite end of the spectrum there. But for me, it all drilled down to support, and we talk about that with servant leadership a lot too, and being that individual to really help and lift others.
I think, Jeff, too, there was a point where, like, you called yourself like an apathetic, what'd you say, block? I felt like when we did come to you, I'm speaking when I come to you, I felt like you also could be super indecisive. Like you didn't make decisions. You always went to Muhammad anyway. So it was like, well, I'm just gonna skip him. We're just gonna go get the answer we need. So sorry about that. But and I didn't mean to apologize. But I definitely, from an efficiency sake, and Erin's nickname is Efficiency Erin, so I'm sure she did the same thing. Would just go and get the answers we needed because you didn't actually make decisions. I don't know if that was being risk averse or if you didn't want the liability of the decision making. I'm not sure where that came from, but that was my impression also, that you weren't really big at making decisions about which way we should go in scenarios.
Yeah, it was definitely more apathy in the form of just, you could call it indecisiveness, but also just like not wanting to actually put the work in to make decisions. Like decisions don't just come. You have to actually like think critically, take the time and sit down and work with it to understand it. And it's much easier to just be like, well, you know what, let me just kind of kick it down the road. So that's what that was.
That's what you used to tell me. You used to say, I don't have you told me this more than once. You said, I don't have the capacity in my brain to keep up and understand all of the little details and nuances of projects. So every time I come back to a project, I have to relearn it and remember what was going on with it. And you always told me, you just always know what's going on with all of them. I always thought that was interesting because I don't even think that you need to know all the little details sometimes to help guide and support individuals in some of the decision making.
Yeah, that's a mind game. That's me kind of boosting you up so that I can not have to take ownership of something, to be honest. So, I mean, everything you're saying are things that are like, to be honest, I'm still working through. I'm still trying to get better about. My awareness is higher, but I'm still guilty of most of these things. I am actually curious. I'll ask, and you don't have to, again, sugarcoat or apologize. But today, is any of that improved or better by your perception? And if so, why? Or what do you see has changed for you personally?
I think for me, it definitely has changed. And I know that when I have problems or big decisions that I'm making, Jeff, I come to you with those, even though you say, "Oh, I'm not really your boss anymore." Like I thrust that journey for us still, but I think also that happened because we did work so closely together on a previous project for about a year, and we built that relationship. But I saw you really try and always be that person to answer actually my project management questions. Then you helped me strategize and think differently and improve on where I needed improvement, which is not what I saw from you in the very beginning, when I feel like I drastically needed improvement or somebody pointing out where I could improve to set me up for success. So I saw you do that, starting in 2019, and especially when we worked really, really closely together.
For me, I think I remember sitting somewhere in Canada with you and you kind of introspecting on your role with the project managers and how you didn't feel like you could really help them and what that meant for you as a boss. Like I remember you having like this moment of introspection then, and then coming to today, I think that you offer a lot more transparency and honesty in where you are today. Like even just the other day, you're like, no, I own that. I should have done this. I was doing this. I think that you're much more aware of where you sit and how you're reacting and interacting with the people around you. And I think that helps foster better relationships and trust among the team members, including with myself. So I know that I appreciate that. And it makes me feel like I can do that with others because you do that, even though it can be hard to do.
You also have a lot more face time with people. It drastically different. I think within my first 6 months, I had like a serious, other than our training, which as we already discussed, was partially you just saying, hey, here's a spreadsheet of links, go take a look at this. But I think we had like one serious sit down one-on-one, I think maybe like 3 months or 6 months after I joined, but I had one pretty shortly with Mohammed, our CEO, as well. So it felt just as often, I was having serious conversations with, my trajectory, where I was going, what I needed to improve on with, our CEO, as I was with you in the beginning. But I think that has also drastically changed. You're constantly having one-on-ones with a lot of individuals on our project management team and providing that help and support, even if, we don't really have any newbies anymore on our team, but you are still providing that support that everybody constantly needs to get better, no matter where you are, in the chain.
I think too, over this last year, the three of us have been able to work really closely together on a lot of different things. And I feel very empowered by you, Jeff, to like go off and, figure out what we need to do, make decisions. Even if it's, I remember specifically one, like, let's just create a new policy. And Erin's like, yeah, let's make a new policy. Just like, I support you, go do it. And we did. So I just think that's awesome. You don't get that from a lot of, bosses either often.
I really regret asking this question, because it's really awkward to hear compliments from myself. I don't know how to take those, but I do appreciate you sharing, because what I was trying to get out was what you perceive as like what made the difference. And I got that perspective. It's a good reminder for me to keep working on those things that you're saying, making the time for people, building those relationships, because for me personally, the biggest difference, the most tangible difference for me is just how I even view, like, for instance, both of you used to be like a position, a role, a project, and a liability at times, where it's like, I would get frustrated with not just you, but anybody, like, why are we making these mistakes? Why are we, that was like the numbers, the dots and the lines drawn through my head. And today I definitely see you both as people first, your personalities first, your lives, friends really first before anything else. And then we work together. So it, to me personally, makes a huge difference, because I have way more, like, I don't say I have an open door, but it feels like I see you guys at my door more often, just because, and I really appreciate that. And so I think a big part of it for me as trying to grow through this was that grace that you both offered me as I tried to change, and you were willing to take the time to work with me on it and like look past your kind of set notions or things that I've done in the past, and you were willing to kind of work with me through it. And that made a huge difference, because I don't think I could have, made any progress if you weren't willing to kind of go out of your way to work with me and forgive me. So that was a huge part for me, from you guys. Oh, look at the time. So I hope, there's so much more actually I want to dig in. We'll probably talk some more after this stops recording, but thanks for joining me on this experiment. I know, Erin, you're saying your hands have been sweating for like 30 minutes leading up to this. You had no idea what's going on. Erin, this is not Erin's comfort zone. So a special thank you to Erin. She's not like being on film or recording. So thank you. But overall, thank you both of you for sure for this kind of trip down memory lane. And I think you guys may have sugarcoated some things. Ashley kept apologizing to me for things that are 3 years ago, so that's cool. Sorry. But this was fun, and I think this kind of opens up my mind to like do this more often. Actually, obviously not always recorded on a podcast, but I think there's a lot more to be learned from kind of retroing on the past here. So definitely a great learning for me. Hopefully there's value for listeners as well. So let us know if you like this type of format, if you like what we did, and what we talked about here. It was definitely super, super weird and awkward for all three of us. So if you like more of it, you'll have to let us know, because we might not do it again otherwise. We are aiming to post new episodes every Tuesday. And if you have feedback for us, if you like this, please do let us know at softway.com/labs. That's LAABS. And please do leave a review, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, and share with a friend, because we really have this passion for what we talk about, what we want to share with the world, and what we want to continue growing in. And hopefully it helps you out. So with that, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Erin. We will talk again very soon, and we will see everyone next time.